Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of The Conversation here on Lagos Television. I am Abimbola Bello.
Good morning. We are back here again. I am Ajibola Ojeshola.
Okay, Ajibola said we're back here again. So there was Monday Night Football last night. Did you watch it?
Well, because I had no stake, so I didn't really watch. And I just saw highlights of the matches. And for me, like we said here yesterday, it is Arsenal's own to win. It's now left for the team to rise up to the occasion and, of course, do the needful to clinch the EPL this season. But for Champions League, I'm saying no to Arsenal.
Yes, saying no to Arsenal. Okay, well, let's see how that pans out at the end of the day. So many things to look out for on our news points this morning. Let's take, just a bit of our news points this morning. Ajibola, let's start with you.
And before we take the news point, like we discussed yesterday, Abimbola, the cutoff mark for JAMB was left at 150 again.
Yeah, maybe I should start doing some prophecies.
Yes, yes.
Maybe I should start doing some prophecies. I remember when we spoke about it last night. I said I don't think it would be fair to further take it away from 150. If no,
Out of 400.
least. We can't even go past 150. And I think, as the years roll by, we should also get it back up to, what it used to be. Maybe even if, there was a time it was 180.
Yeah.
And then it came to 150. So I wasn't expecting anything lesser than 150 yesterday. If it had dropped further, it then means that, or it could amend that let's just say goodbye to standards of education. So I think at 150, but they also did a couple of adjustments here and there. So for NCE, you do not need UTME anymore.
For agriculture.
So I think a couple of things have also been done to ensure that if you do not get into the university, you can get into the polytechnic or you can get into the College of Education. So I think some kind of, good work from the Ministry of Education, but we cannot relent. We cannot go back on standards.
No, we cannot.
Yeah.
All right, let's take our news point. Federal government, World Bank in talks over second largest $1.25 billion loan. That's a lot. The federal government has stepped up engagement with the World Bank for a fresh $1.25 billion loan to support economic reforms, job creation, and competitiveness, as findings by the Punch showed that the facility has reached a critical stage in the lender's approval process. The proposed loan, titled Nigeria Actions for Investment and Job Acceleration, is expected to be presented for approval on June 26, 2026, about 6 months and 21 days before the January 16, 2027 presidential election, according to the revised timetable of the Independent National Electoral Commission. If approved, the loan will rank as the second largest single World Bank facility secured under President Bola Tinubu, behind only the $1.5 billion reforms for economic stabilization to enable transformation, development policy, financing approved in June 2024. At an exchange rate of 1,361 to the dollar, the proposed $1.25 billion facility translates to 1.7 trillion naira, showing the scale of external financing being pursued by the federal government amid ongoing economic reforms. If approved and fully disbursed without any delay, the proposed $1.25 billion world dollar loan, equivalent to 1.7 trillion at an exchange rate of 1,361, will raise Nigeria's external debt from 74 trillion, that's about $51 billion, as of December 31, 2025, to 76 trillion, that's about $53.1 billion. The country's total public debt would also rise from 159 trillion to at least 160 trillion in dollar terms. Nigeria's total public debt could rise from $110 billion to about $122 billion if the facility is eventually approved and fully disbursed. Details of the facility were contained in a World Bank program information document obtained by the Punch on Monday, which showed that the loan has progressed beyond the initial concept and appraisal phases. Crucially, the Punch confirmed that the operation is now at the decision level of the World Bank project cycle, a point at which the lender's management reviews the final appraisal package and determines whether the project should proceed to the Board of Executive Directors for approval. Let me just leave the story there. $1.25 billion loan, the second largest being taken by the current administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And for me, we have had different economic stakeholders on this program telling us that it is not a crime for you to take loan or loans as long as you are injecting these loans into critical sectors of the economy to accelerate development, to accelerate growth. But then I will also call on members of the National Assembly, who are the ones usually saddled with responsibility of approving these loans, to also monitor what the federal government does with these loans so that at the end of the day, generations coming behind us would not be in perpetual debt.
Are you sure you actually want me to add anything to what you said? Because I really do not know what you want me to add. It's worrisome, the number of loans that we are taking as a country. But I remember that we still had this conversation less than 2 weeks ago where our guest did agree that, I mean, wherever, you know, loans are taken, that is how governments do function. But again, I think this is the time to start looking at what those loans are really used for. He was also able to highlight that, okay, there are some projects that you know of a certainty that if you expend such loans, at least it's easier to recoup from such loans. But again, when you look at where we're taking the loans from, there are certain people that even if you do not want to take the loan, they will force it down your throat and they will put you in, box you in a corner and say you're a third world country or a third generation. World Bank is one of those people. Even if you do not want to take a loan, they will help you find the reason why you should take a loan. So government should also step back and also appraise properly and see whether or not these loans are avoidable. If they're avoidable, or maybe the costs can also be pruned, because at the end of the day, we're servicing enough loan already.
Yeah.
And it is also, there's a way it is eating into our savings as a country. So, but then like you rightly called out the National Assembly, we do hope they will do the needful, even we know there is the principle of checks and balances. Principle of checks and balances is not the one that will make you docile. You need to talk. You need to ask questions and see how, you know, as a country, more questions will be answered than you just nodding and say it is okay.
And I also remember what our guest said, I think it was Mukhtar Mohammed, who said that instead of taking loans from World Bank and other countries, why can't we partner with the private sector to fund certain infrastructural development so that at the end of the day, these private entities will be able to toll those infrastructure and, of course, recoup their money. That way, the federal government will not be able to incur debt and, of course, use the larger chunk of our budget annually to service debt. And this National Assembly, I don't know, is it everything that the executive brings to your table that you must accept?
Well, let's see how this pans out at the end of the day. Let's take our second story this morning. It is about Lagos targeting rail expansion, electric ferries in 2050 transport plan. And the story says the Lagos State government on Monday outlined an expansive long-term transportation strategy built around rail expansion, electric ferries, cleaner buses, and digital traffic management as it seeks to ease congestion and reshape mobility across the state through 2050. Speaking at a ministerial briefing marking the third year of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu's second term, Commissioner for Transportation Oluwaseun Oshiyemi said the state's transport reforms are anchored on the Strategic Transport and Mobility Master Plan designed to guide infrastructure development over the next 25 years. According to him, and I quote, the goal is to give all Lagosians accessibility to an integrated multimodal transportation system that is seamless, safe, affordable, sustainable, and inclusive, Oshiyemi said, end of quote. According to the commissioner, the strategy prioritizes mass transit through rail systems, bus rapid transit corridors, and structured ferry operations functioning as a single integrated network. The government said Lagos is developing a 7-line electric rail network intended to become the backbone of transportation within the state. The Blue Line currently operates between Marina and Mount 2, while construction is ongoing on its extension to Okukumaiko. Officials said track lane, station development, and installation of power systems are continuing. The state additionally confirms that feasibility studies are ongoing for the second phase of the Red Line, which will extend from Onyigbo to the National Theatre and connect with the Blue Line. Let me flip to, according to the commissioner, about 2 million passengers now use inland waterways monthly, while daily traffic on Lagos ferry services routes has increased from about 1,500 to 2,000 commuters. 7 ferries have been retrofitted, while new routes linking Ijede, Ibeshe, Lekki, Victoria Island, Falomo, and Itomo have commenced operations. It's actually, a big read or a long read, and where the commissioner was speaking yesterday was the commencement of the ministerial briefing, and Minister of Transportation, of course, came first this year. And what has worked for Lagos is the fact that there's always a plan, and it's a long-term plan. Lagos is far beyond the immediate, and so if in 2026 you're already planning for 2030, 2050, it means that you're doing something good. It means that you're looking at the future, and planning for generations yet unborn. And I think this is what Lagos has benefited for so many years, until today, which is working for the state. So we do hope that all of these things will translate to better transportation system for the state. And one thing about Lagos that I think is worthy of emulation is the fact that not just one transport system is being developed; it is across board, and that is why it is multimodal. You look at the rail, you look at the ferries, you look at the buses. It just means that if Lagos gets it right in public transportation, it's going to be a lot easier. At least then people can be bold enough not to take their cars out of their houses, out of their homes, or maybe dedicate 2 or 3 days that you will ride on public transportation, and then you know that okay, you're taking a break from driving, you're taking a break from Lagos traffic, and then you can sleep on the bus, or sleep on the train, and then just be chauffeur driven to wherever you're going to. Planning is good, planning is perfect, but planning again without works, obviously, is going to be dead on arrival. So Lagos is planning, but at the end of the day, what will those plans translate into? So it's a good one coming from the Lagos State government, but perhaps again, funding needs to be considered.
Yeah, funding is very critical here, and that's where the private sector will continue to partner with government for government to continue to deliver infrastructure to the people of Lagos State. And like you rightly pointed out, Lagos is already thinking about the future, and that's those are part of the gains of having a particular political party in power since 1999. You cannot compare the level of infrastructure in Lagos State to other states of the Federation, and sometimes they do come here to come and study how Lagos is doing things. Looking at the picture here, it looks very beautiful, and of course the future looks bright. So for those that are watching, or those that are going to be beneficiaries of this infrastructural development by Lagos State government in the transportation sector, and you are not paying your taxes, is your conscience pricking you at all? That's the question.
Okay. All right, we will move on now with our news point, continuing with our news point this morning. And I think this one is quite worrisome anytime things like this come up. And it is coming from the U.S., warning nations as ISIS moves operation to West Africa. And the story says the United States has identified Nigeria and the Lake Chad Basin as critical fronts in its 2026 counter-terrorism strategy, warning that extremist groups operating across Africa remain a growing threat to global security. In the strategy documents, the U.S. government said part of Africa, including West Africa, the Sahel region, the Lake Chad Basin, Mozambique, Sudan, and Somalia have witnessed a resurgence of terrorist activities following the collapse of ISIS strongholds in Iraq and Syria. The document noted that remnants of the Islamic State and affiliated jihadist groups had relocated to Africa and Central Asia, exploiting ungoverned spaces and weak security structures. President Trump unleashed the greatest fighting force the world has ever seen, and within a matter of weeks, a jihadi insurgency which controlled vast territories across Iraq and Syria was gone. Subsequently, the surviving remnants of the world's most dangerous terrorist group of the modern age were forced to relocate to Africa and Central Asia, in turn exploiting the ungoverned spaces there. The U.S. said its major objective in Africa will be to prevent extremist groups from establishing operational bases capable of launching attacks against American interests. I will leave it here, and two things, for me are concerning here. Number one, as much as this, is a security call and a warning for nations to actually be on the alert, you'd also need to ask the question, is this also about the U.S. still wanting to stay relevant and still wanting to claim the superpowers? And, again, because I really do not see how the issue of President Trump dislodging those people from their bases is worth pushing an agenda for. So is it also a ploy by the U.S. to continue to play the in quotes, continue to play the superpower here? So if you're saying that you dislodged them from where they are, why are they choosing Africa? Why are they choosing West Africa or other, continents? Why can't they also fight back to stay where you, the U.S., is dislodging them from? So sometimes, again, these things happen and you do not even know where to place these things. Is it because America cares so much about Africa? Or is it about the fact that America wants to stay relevant when issues like this come up? So I think everybody also needs to wake up
and open their
smell
eyes.
the coffee. Just, just ensure that as much as you're serving what it is that the U.S. is saying, you also need to calculate.
You have actually answered those questions, Abimbola. I remember when Donald Trump was campaigning, his slogan then was America First.
Yeah.
So if your slogan was America First when you were campaigning, then what's your interest in the West African sub-region? You should face your America and, of course, sort the issues that you are battling with presently, which is the crisis that you have created in the Middle East, by US, by Israel, and of course pressurizing Iran to dance to your rhythm. Of course, that is not working out. So you have raised vital questions this morning, and I'm also suspicious, like rightly pointed out.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me quickly take the last one. Tinubu in Kenya for France-Africa Economic Cooperation meeting. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu yesterday arrived in Nairobi, Kenya, ahead of the African-France summit scheduled to hold between today and tomorrow in the East African country. The presidential aircraft landed at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, Nairobi, at about 12:15 a.m. local time and was received by Nigerian and Kenyan government officials. Among them were the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Taiwo Oyedele, Minister of Trade, Industry and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, Minister of Marine and Blue Economy, Adegboyega Oyetola, Minister of Environment, and a host of other ministers. And essentially, the president is in Nairobi to participate in the Africa-France Summit, co-chaired by the French president. The summit, themed Africa Forward, the Africa-France Partnership for Innovation and Growth, is expected to deliberate on key issues affecting the continent, including energy transition, green industrialization, digital transformation, climate action, and reforms of the global financing architecture. So, let me leave it there. We all know that Mr. President has been out of the country for a while now. Initially, it was in France, and just yesterday, it landed in Kenya. And all these meetings, all these deliberations, all these discussions are hopefully they're expected to translate into something good for the economy of Africa, for the economy of Nigeria, so that these journeys, these travels would not be in vain at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And, there's always the joy when African leaders come together. I just do hope that, the meetings will be deep enough and for them to also tell themselves the truth that they really need to know, because there's also that need to understand that if the continent is safe, secure, and progressive, then it won't be a one-country thing. Imagine if we say the continent, the African continent, and Nigerians are still cannot stay in South Africa peacefully. Yeah. Tanzanians cannot stay in South Africa peacefully. Other countries, nationals cannot stay in another African country peacefully. Then why are we a continent? Or why are we even doing business together? So what are the leaders telling themselves? So I think that, you know, when they meet like this is an avenue for them to actually look at themselves in the faces and tell themselves the gospel truth. If there's no point being friends, then why are you coming together and sitting together and you know, just feigning that you love one another? It doesn't work that way. I don't know if you also stumbled on a video yesterday, Emmanuel Macron, still at this particular summit, where, you know, some people were onto a drama presentation, and I think they were just making noise in the hall.
I saw it.
That thing pained me. It pains me because somebody had to tell us to keep quiet. And I'm like, now, can we just, decorum, when we go to places, can we just keep quiet? If, you know, at such a gathering, it took a president to tell other people to keep quiet, then it means that what exactly are we doing? But I just hope that at the end of the day, all of the trips Mr. President is making will not just be for the fun of it. It will just be to the benefit of the country and, of course, to the continent. This morning, let's go on to the X platform. Apparently, that was what we started with as Ajibola raised the question. And so we're continuing there this morning, where UTME is trending on the X platform today. And already we talked about, you know, the cutoff mark. We talked about, you know, also a few changes that have been made concerning, you know, those that do not need to write UTME and those, of course, who do not need to go through, you know, that process to gain admission into the universities. But again, you know, when things like this happen, there will be those for and there will be those against. And so a lot of questions are being asked this morning. Again, going back to what JAM did say yesterday, it was a unanimous agreement that 150 for universities, 150 for polytechnics, 150 for Jibola Polytechnic is 100 though.
Yes, not 150.
So colleges of nursing and others 150, polytechnic 100. And some people will still not score 100.
I mean, some people will not score 80 out of 400.
So
and you know, that brings me back to what you raised earlier and even yesterday about the standard of education. Why would somebody who had passed through the secondary school, who had done the SSC or NECO, whichever you have chosen to do, not be able to score 150 or 200 out of 400? Then why are you in school? Then you should go to a technical college and maybe learn one vocational skill.
So here's another thing that a lot of people have also raised. So when we wrote this exam, it was longhand. But now they're talking about the CBTs. They're complaining about the systems shutting down. They're complaining about time not being enough. They're complaining about a couple of logistics issues. So it is not an excuse in totality. But I think there's also a need for JAMB to also look at these things and say whether or not the system will deliberately shut down students, you know, or if truly there isn't enough time for them to complete. But the way I know CBT, it is usually not so different from OBJ that we do. So you have to be spot on the alert. And I think this is where also the constant use of computer will also help the students. There are so many students that it is when they want to write JAMB that they will first hold mouse in their lives. So these things are also there. But I think there's mock. They do mock now. That's the essence of the mock. So it's a long way, honestly. But we do hope that things will get better at the end of the day.
If things will get better, and I think some of our governors might need to also assist some of the students, because
How?
you
In
visit
their
some
schools?
public schools,
Okay.
Abimbola, you can hardly find maybe one or two
Functioning
desktops.
computers. Yeah.
Desktops. And then you have thousands of students. So in a month or in 6 months, you might only have a contact with that computer maybe for a few minutes or for a few seconds.
This is where, again, I'll come back to parents. So I know that it is the role of the government to provide infrastructure, especially for public schools. I'm going to look directly into the camera this morning and say, parents, help yourselves.
And I help your children.
Yes, help your children. If you think that government is not coming through, if it is one long holiday, enroll your child in a computer training, just so they can have a hang of these things. I've learned that whatever thing that you teach a child, it stays with them.
It does.
Especially children, they have the retention, they have the capacity. Not even the Gen Z children now. Say my son, sometimes they will go on my phone, they will go to where even me, the owner of the phone, I've never seen in my life. And I'm asking, how did you get there? So we need to, do more. We need to take a break. When we return, hopefully our guest will be here and the conversation continues. The Lagos State Christian Pilgrims Welfare Board announces the commencement of the sales of forms for the year 2026 pilgrimage exercise. Registration forms can be obtained from the following offices. The main office at 22 to 23 Obakinjobi Way, Old Secretariat, Ikeja, GRA, and the office annex at Chapel of Christ the Light, 1